Today, we're going to be asking the question on whether or not the Tartarians, or ancient Scythians, Celts, Druids, were carnivores. Try to detach from the mainstream materialistic perspective of eating flesh and not see this as just vegan propaganda. I will make it clear towards the end of the video the diet that I prefer. We truly appreciate all the support lately, guys, and if you could keep sharing these videos, it would really mean a lot. With that said, let's get started. First, we have to understand cosmological ideologies. There are only two main ones in the modern day, that of something and that of nothing. This does take an occult mindset to understand to a certain degree, as the cosmology of something is that of ancient origins. The idea that reality is separated into different planes of existence, each sourcing the plane from above, the top plane being the Godhead. Then we have the cosmology of the modern day that implies that we came from nothing, that we came out of nowhere from a big bang, our planet formed from collision, combustion, and ice dust. From there, all life formed through evolution, leading us to a fight to survive situation. This ideology was specifically designed by the Jesuit Church to serve as an atheist explanation of the world. They knew that in the future, they would need to hide all evidence of God, and the biggest proof is the reality we live in. So they taught materialism, and this idea that our ancestors were savages. They hid the ancient knowledge of the Druids, also known as Tartarians, because it would expose the ancient advanced ancestry of humans. This was necessary to suppress the church in order to continue their agenda of world domination. So you have to decide, what cosmology do you belong to? Do you belong to the concept that we came from monkeys and materialism? Or do you believe in spiritual bodies of existence and metaphysical experiences? Remember, you can't have both. If you believe that the ancients were carnivores and that we came from a fight to survive situation, you are subconsciously promoting the cosmology of materialism. Psychic phenomena and spiritual experiences actually completely contradict the mainstream view of science, globe, and evolution. We all inherently know about these things, the astral body, dreams, telepathy type experiences, and I think many of us have experienced this, yet we fall for this Jesuit trap of materialism, and the majority of the human population believes that they have to eat meat to survive. And it's important to note, you only had to eat meat to survive if you come from this cosmology worldview of evolution, which, remember, I'm insisting is a falsity made up by the Jesuit Church. If you come from the cosmology of something, or spiritual planes, then you know that we came from light. We are advanced spiritual beings, and slowly, we de-evolved through many different ages. This is the most ancient tradition, as many Greek philosophers mention this golden age. Many know that Tartaria was a free energy society, and some even mention that they didn't eat at all, since many of the cities around the world that were Tartarian actually don't have sewage systems. Check out the video on the Great Stink if you haven't seen that. But from my research, the Tartarians are the ancient Scythians, Celtic Druids, or the quote Aryan race. In our next video, I plan on debunking the common lie that Aryan implies a white race. It actually means noble ones, which is outside the scope of this video, but we have a video coming out next that will put it all together. First, we must understand the differences between cosmological ideologies. Did our ancients come from monkeys? Or is there a spiritual ancestry that we were not taught in the school system that in fact is the most ancient occult tradition that we have? A common question we get asked is, well, what about the natives around the world who hunted animals? What about all the cultures that survive on meat? Most cultures who primarily survive off of meat live to a very short age, but one thing that many of these people are missing is that there have been many cataclysms. This is also something that we all inherently know. We all know about the flood, but many do not know that there have been many cataclysms of fire. There were also times when the sun would go missing for a year. So what do you think would happen in this situation if there was an advanced civilization? Famine? Confusion? A barbaric society? These were what the tribes were after Tartaria, right? The Scythians, the Celts. This is what mainstream history calls it. These were in fact hunters, but this was after the fall of Tartaria and during an age of chaos and confusion. They had to survive how they could, and what happened after was that they became savage hunters. Countless wars because this made them more predator-like. This may have been the only way to survive, so there's no reason to blame anyone for their actions. It's simply the implication that this is not our ancient way and is not the natural diet of the Tartarians. There is so much research that shows that our ancestors were light eaters that eat from the fruit of trees. We'll cover that soon. But the big point to take from that is that humanity has gone through many different ages. Some ages we begin to rise spiritually, and others we fall materialistically. From Plato's Timaeus, quote, "O Solon, Solon, you Hellenes are never anything but children, and there's not an old man among you." Solon in return asked him what he meant. "I mean to say," he replied, "that in mind you are all young. There is no old opinion handed down among you by ancient tradition, nor any science which is hoary with age, and I will tell you why. There have been, and will be again, many destructions of mankind, arising out of many causes. The greatest have been brought about by the agencies of fire and water, and other lesser ones by innumerable other causes. There is a story, which even you have preserved, that once upon a time, Patheon, the son of Helios, have yoked the steeds in his father's chariot, because he was not able to drive them in the path of his father, burnt up all that was upon the earth, and was himself destroyed by a thunderbolt." Now this has the form of a myth, but really signifies a declination of the bodies moving in the heavens around the earth, and a great conflagration of things upon the earth, which recurs after long intervals. He's talking about fire and blazing destruction on the land. At such times, those who live upon the mountains and in dry and lofty places are more liable to destruction than those who dwell by the rivers or on the seashore. And from this calamity the Nile, who is our never-failing savior, delivers and preserves us. When on the other hand, the gods purge the earth with a deluge of water, the survivors in your country are herdsmen and shepherds who dwell on the mountain, but those who, like you, live in cities are carried by the rivers into the sea, whereas in this land, neither then nor at any other time does the water come down from above on the fields, having always a tendency to come up from below, for which the reasons the traditions preserved here are the most ancient. So he's saying the water comes from below sometimes, okay? The fact is that wherever the extremity of winter frost or the summer does not prevent, mankind exists, sometimes in greater, sometimes in lesser numbers. And whatever happened either in your country or ours, or in any other region of which we are informed, if there were any actions noble or great or in any other way remarkable, they have all been written down by us of old and are preserved in our temples. Whereas just when you and other nations are beginning to be provided with letters and other requisites of civilized life, after the usual interval, the stream from heaven, like a pestilence, comes pouring down and leaves only those of you who are desolate of letters and education, and so you have to begin all over again like children and know nothing of what happened in ancient times, either among us or among yourselves. So just to break down that last part for a second, and I really recommend reading it because it paints a perfect picture about the different ages of cataclysm. He's saying that these people were basically like children. They had to start civilization all over again. This is why many cultures and many natives of many different lands basically resulted to cannibalism. So ask yourself the question, what was the norm that you grew up to? Was it eating fruits for every meal? Was it eating just vegetables? No. For most of us, it was in fact eating 3 times a day with meat as a staple. Everyone grew up learning this from birth, with the exception of many alternative research, but the main point is that this is what they promote in the education system. At school, lunch, 20 years ago, what did they feed? Was it veganism? No, it was all carnivore-based system. They pushed evolution in the public schools, and no spirituality is taught in any regards. Does that not make you slightly suspicious about evolution? If you watched the last video on Tartaria Vaccinated, we go over how every industry was hijacked by these robber barons. So if you can tie all that together, tie it back to the education system, because then, if you can drop evolution for a moment, that is where you begin to make progress. That is one of the most fundamental structures of the cosmology of materialism. Once that comes down, the structure begins to wobble. Now I know many may say, well, they're gonna start feeding veganism and GMOs. Yeah, well, it's like all these alternative subjects. Once something gets popular, they have to hijack it. Which in many videos, we have mentioned that modern veganism is unhealthy because of soy, fake meats, and sugars. Check out the human diet video, I've covered this there is another way that does not involve any of those things. The only reason they switched to veganism is because they could not stop the amount of people changing their diet and fixing their health problems. So that eventually got corrupted with Whole Foods getting bought out, Monsanto and their GMOs, and now the mainstream media is pushing veganism. 50 years ago, it was the opposite. Also, Americans don't eat in moderation, and never have. Since the 1960s, the per capita intake has doubled. The average man eats more than his own weight in meat every year, even as that weight has increased by 30 pounds since 1960. Americans eat meat in quantities that are double the global average. Globally, meat consumption is projected to increase by 75% over the next 3 decades. Robert Coleman Atkins was an American physician and cardiologist best known for the Atkins diet, which requires close control of carbohydrate consumption and emphasizes protein and fat as their primary sources of dietary calories, in addition to a controlled number of carbohydrates from vegetables. The commercial success of Atkins' diet plan led Time to name the doctor a Person of the Year in 2002. The Atkins diet has been described as one of the most popular fad diets in the United States. So let's be honest when we say that the mainstream promotion of diet was the Atkins diet. This only changed to veganism once people started waking up to the concept of whole organic foods.
Go ahead, Dr. Ornish.
Well, first of all, the last time I debated Dr. Atkins, I chided him for not publishing any research anywhere, so I think this is a good start. It's not a particularly good study, but it's a good start. I'm just glad to say that he's doing research, in that there's no control group. We don't know what these patients were eating when they started. I mean, they could have been eating a diet even higher in fat when they started. There's no baseline data at all. There was no change in the LDL. And the only published study that was done of an Atkins diet was done in 1980 by John LaRosa in the Journal of the American Dietetic Association. And they found that the LDL did go up and the cholesterol levels did go up. And so I think that while I applaud the beginning of doing research, I think that we need to evaluate research based on the standards of good science. Yeah, and I want to just say I agree with everything that you said. I applaud Dr. Bethay. You're helping people become more aware of the importance of limiting the intake of simple sugars. But I do strongly disagree with your statement that heart disease is an inevitable fact of aging. It's an inevitable fact of aging when people eat a diet like people in this country have eaten. But in other cultures, heart disease is quite rare even when people get older. So I think we can give people a more hopeful message that there actually is a lot they can do. And if you can stop or reverse heart disease, then you can probably prevent it. It's not such a leap of faith.
Let me ask the protein folks, I'm sorry to lump you, and one thing I think, Dr. Sear, is very important. Can you explain that how your diet is specifically different from Atkins?
Well, as I tried to point out in the presentation, that the diet is based on 2 words most Americans hate to hear: balance and moderation. When you're eating 10 to 15 servings of fruits and vegetables per day, I don't think anybody could disagree with that. If you're never eating any more than 3 to 4 ounces of low-fat protein at a meal, I don't think anyone can disagree with that. And if you're adding small amounts of heart-healthy monounsaturated fat to your diet, I don't think anyone could disagree with that. What we have is, from the standpoint, we have, a misconception here. We have to basically, as I said earlier, get back and look at this epidemic of obesity from a different perspective. Treat it as a disease and find the most appropriate blood parameter that predicts it, and that is excess insulin. If you're following Dr. Ornish's diet and your insulin levels are under control, keep following it. If you're following Dr. Atkins' diet and your insulin levels are under control, keep following it on a lifetime basis. But if both those 2 extremes are not working for you, then begin to moderate your diet and eat the things that we are genetically designed to eat. We're designed to eat fruits and vegetables. We are not designed to eat grains. They did not exist on the face of the earth 10,000 years ago.
Well, thank you for that. And Dr. Atkins, following up on, let's say, the severe, which you're usually put in that category, would you have a patient that would come to you? Because I think about the importance today about treating the individual and everybody's individual lifestyles, food preferences. Have you had people who come to you and you'd say to them, I don't think this is for you?
Well, 50% of my patients, I don't think it's for them, because 50% of my patients don't have a weight problem.
Okay, of the people who do have a weight problem.
That rarely happens. If the weight problem is serious, then I'm going to work on restricting carbohydrates. They may have some other problems. I'd never put any 2 people on the same diet because we do food allergy testing, so we know right from the very beginning which foods certain people have to avoid, and that's not the same in other people. And they may come in with a different problem. I don't want people to think that most people come to me with a weight problem. Only about 10% of the people come to me. It's because I am a cardiologist. Most of the time they come to me because they were told the same thing that David Letterman heard. You got to have a bypass, only these people weren't intimidated enough to get it right away. They came to see me And 85% of those people didn't need a bypass after we went on our program. This is why I sort of resent the idea that people are saying that my diet is not heart healthy. If it were not heart healthy, we wouldn't be reversing heart disease and getting these people who were having chest pain on a little bit of exertion out there running and jogging a few months later.
This brings me to Dr. Ornish to follow up on that. Dr. Ornish, would you then, this is a question from someone in the audience, tiny handwriting, by the way, with your focus being on disease prevention diet and reversal diet, would you at any time recommend a high-protein diet for severely obese individuals? I mean, high-protein fasting?
Well, first of all, let me say that I would love to see some data from Dr. Atkins showing that he can actually get reversal of heart disease, measuring the underlying disease process.
Well, we're working on it.
Well, good. I'd
But
love to see it.
we're not as good a fundraiser as you are. We have to dig into our own pockets. That's the problem.
I'm sorry. Carolyn, can I address that issue?
I think with the number of books you've sold, you could probably fund your own studies.
I highly recommend anybody who thinks meat eating is healthy to check out that debate. Atkins didn't do too well. Just imagine this. Keto is much worse than the Atkins diet. It actually speeds up the process of toxicity. Keto is the worst fad to have ever come to the human race. It is the promotion of a strict carnivore diet. People say vegans are getting unhealthy, and most of the vegans who are getting unhealthy have no clue what they're doing, but many are getting sick on keto because they as well have no idea what they're doing. They're losing their hair, and yes, I can understand the short-term benefits of keto, but this is only because your body is so filled with mucus that it cannot absorb minerals. The only way for you to do so is by filling yourself with even more toxins. In the long run, you will begin to see different side effects from eating a keto diet. It will not heal you, it will not detoxify you, it will only fill your body with more acids and block your lymphatic system from working properly. The keto diet gives you a much higher risk of heart disease due to saturated fats. You can have kidney stones, constipation, nutrient deficiencies because of all the mucoid plaque. This whole idea that humans are made to be omnivores and that we can eat meat on a daily basis directly stems from the mainstream promoting cavemen, evolution, and a world without God. The religious meat eaters are a serious contradiction in that they belong to the cosmology of God or spiritual planes, yet they eat as if they belong to the cosmology of materialism. The Bible makes it very clear what is and not food. Let's first start off with the King James Bible. Quote, "And God said, Behold, I have given you every herb-bearing seed which is upon the face of all the earth, and every tree in which is the fruit of a tree yielding seed. To you it shall be for meat." Now I want you to notice how they include meat in this verse. This was purposefully added by the Jesuit Phoenician-controlled Francis Bacon. Let's look at some older versions. Hebrew. God said, "See, I give you every seed-bearing plant that is upon the earth, and every tree that has a seed-bearing fruit. They shall be yours for food." Greek. And God said, "Behold, I have given you every seed-bearing grass, which is on the earth, to produce seed, and every tree which has in itself the fruit of the seed that it has produced, it will be food for you." So why does the King James Bible say meat? Well, it's like the priest of Egypt was trying to tell Solon. This was written from the perspective of a corrupted civilization, and they wrote these translations. Think about the foundation of your ideologies. Do you believe in evolution? Do you believe that we came from cavemen and had to fight to survive? As I mentioned before, there were multiple cataclysms that caused different civilizations to fall into barbarism. But if you believe in advanced civilizations of the past, like Atlantis, that is in a complete contradiction to the mainstream timeline of evolution. Why don't you think they teach about Atlantis in the school system? They've known about it since the 1800s. It's because it would blow the theory of evolution out of the water, and the only explanation left would be that of spiritual planes, as above, so below. You also can't have spiritual carnivores on a globe that came through random coincidence. What is consciousness? What are other planes of existence? Many of these natives were shamans. This contradiction shows one's lack of knowledge of the occult. Check out the video Occult vs. Globe if you haven't seen it yet. There's only one: survival. Notice how this list is short. That's because there aren't many reasons why you would have to eat meat. There's only one: survival. There's no other food on the land, there's no fruits, there's no plants, there's nothing but animals. And even in those situations, many would rather not kill off the remaining population for their own egotistical survival. This just develops the reptilian brain. I'm going to use the term meat eater, and by no means, I'm not trying to insult anyone or cause more division. By meat eater, I mean the ideology of those who consciously believe that meat is either essential for living or that it is in fact healthy. So let's go over some comments that we have gotten from some meat eaters on the channel. The cycle of life argument. There are many variations of this argument, but the gist is, if we look at nature, every other animal eats other animals to some extent or another, so why would it be any different for humans? Again, this means you belong to the ideology of materialism and evolution. In the cosmology of spiritual planes, we have slowly de-evolved from our original state. We have become more material due to corruption. There is a distinguishment between beast and spiritual helpers. Beasts are much more fully integrated into the material realm. They do not have as much connection to the spirit realm. They are predators of a lower state of being due to the corruption and lower frequency nature of this realm. All animals that are not predators come from more positive spirits of nature, and many of these spirits can be guides. Many have heard the concept of animal guides or spirit guides. Many of these animals can be conduits for advanced benevolent beings. However, I do think there is a specific reason to make humans unique. It's not about selfishness or ego. Both these systems, both carnivore and this idea that we came from spirit, are both based on hierarchy, but for different reasons. The carnivore system, or the system of evolution, is whoever is the most powerful dominates the entire kingdom. That's the natural cycle of life that these meat eaters promote. The spiritual system of planes implies that the Godhead has manifested through these different planes and is but a mirror of our individual selves, as above, so below. The ancient tradition is that we are spiritual helpers, a reflection of God that has come to assist in nature, not destroy it. Even though humans may be a reflection of God, it does not mean that animals are lesser. As the Bible states, man was created before the animals, and the animals came after. Let's remember that. I'm also not coming from a Christian tradition either. If you would like to know where we stand, check out the Ignored Christian Origin series. So, man is a guiding force in nature, not a destructive force of nature. Another aspect to this is spiritual predator animals, or otherwise known as vampires. These do manifest in nature. Snakes are a perfect example. They were revered by many cultures for their occult-like power, but more so by the ancient cultures because it represented the Kundalini energy. However, these snakes in this realm are in fact spiritual vampires. They exist both on the physical and spiritual planes of existence, and they use their occult powers to prey on other victims. Don't get it twisted. These are not true reflections of God, but a corruption of God. Demons, parasitic worms, viruses, and vampires are all examples of these spiritual predators. They extract the life force of other animals. That's what's happening to humans right now, but the worst part is that they aren't even aware of their occult powers, so it makes it lesser than a vampire. Humans are becoming materialistic beasts within the carnivore-based system. The vegans are weak argument. This is said many times and shows how integrated many are into the carnivore-based system and all the biased studies that were paid off to promote it. Just type in vegan bodybuilder. Are you saying these people are all fake? There's countless ways to get protein on a vegan diet. A common thing meat eaters say is cholesterol equals testosterone. That's just a flat out lie. First off, your body creates its own cholesterol, and if your body was in harmony, you would produce all the testosterone you need. But furthermore, we aren't even promoting veganism. Many ancient cultures use probiotic cultures to have much longer lifespans. You can also do this without milk and yogurts by simply having a very rich soil, and this would spread to all your foods. It's about facilitating an environment in which everything is benefiting each other. These probiotics can increase testosterone, and there is scientific evidence for this. Simply changing your will and focus can change testosterone levels as well. Taking cold showers can increase testosterone. Animal cholesterol does not equal strength. What it really means is that you get your sustenance from another being, and that you may be suffering from atherosclerosis. When you eat animal fats on a daily basis, you're actually building up so much plaque in your arteries that you begin to slow circulation. This is scientific fact. Watch the nutrition debate if you aren't satisfied. The how do you get certain nutrients argument. Well, once you look into this, you find out that you can get everything you need from plants. How about the myth of calcium? Sesame seeds, yellow peppers, kale, and leafy greens. Okay, what about protein? It's in every single vegetable: lentils, quinoa, chia seeds, hemp, nuts. Go look it up right now if you're a meat eater. Many have never even taken the time to do so. What about vitamins? There are a couple vitamins that meat eaters say vegans aren't getting enough of. How about B12? Many vegans who start out end up getting sick because they're not getting all the nutrients they need. You can't just go and start veganism by buying packaged vegan goods and eat the exact same way you've always have, but just swap it for vegan. It's still going to be unhealthy. You have to actively search out for your nutrients. B12 comes from the fungus in soil. If you're eating from an organic farm with extremely healthy soil, you would be completely fine. Imagine if we actually started looking into this and tried to increase the B12 within all of our food products naturally. B12 also comes from sea plants, which is pretty easy to find nowadays. Have some vegan sushi every once in a while. How about vitamin D? Just get in the sun, mushrooms. Vitamin K? Brussels sprouts, cabbage, kale, spinach, kiwis. How about long chain omega-3s? You really don't need that much. Meat eaters oversaturate, but you can get these from walnuts, flax seeds, chia seeds, hemp seeds, edamame, seaweed, and algae. It's the same thing with iodine. You can get it from greens and sea plants. What about iron? Lentils, beans, grains, nuts, seeds, many different vegetables. Then we have calcium, which we already mentioned. You can get it from seeds and vegetables. So, what is your argument against a whole food raw diet that also may include fermented and probiotic cultures? There is proof that it reverses heart disease. No other diet can completely reverse heart disease. There are no scientific studies that shows keto actually reverses atherosclerosis. It doesn't exist. One, it's not the cycle of life, it's the destruction of life. 2. Nature is medicine, and there is food provided by nature. The simple godlike design of nature and plants is proof within itself that these foods were designed to be eaten. 3. Meat is not spiritual, it's actually vampiric. You are feeding on the flesh of another sentient being, and meat eaters only deny the spiritual implications because they think veganism is unhealthy or that there is no other solution. But we must find one and make it reality. 4. It causes disease. There's piles of scientific evidence that meat does not digest well and actually causes auto-intoxication, not to mention heart disease. Pounds of toxic poop sit in your stomach on a constant day basis because you eat so much acidic foods. This in turn clogs up your lymphatic system until eventually your blood becomes toxic. 5. We are anatomically designed to be fruitarian and light vegetarians. Carnivores have shorter digestive systems and much sharper teeth. Most people would not kill a full-grown animal and eat it. Fishing is an exception because it's difficult to sense their emotions as much as a mammal, but the majority of human beings could never kill an animal, cut it up, and eat it. In fact, most meat is tasteless. Meat only tastes good because of the seasoning from herbs and vegetables. 7. Cooking food and meats is even more acidic. Dousing your meats in oil and butter actually causes even more problems. 8. Meat is not sustainable. It causes disease, pain, and at this point, most of you guys are eating genetically modified meats since what do you think these animals are eating? The quick answer is no. However, it's not impossible to be spiritual while eating meat. As we mentioned, there is conscious and unconscious vampirism, where people harness the energy of other living beings. But just because you eat meat, I wouldn't say that doesn't make you a spiritual person. It just means slowly but surely you are corrupting your temple. And as time progresses, you will become more and more like a beast. You'll begin to lose touch with the more spiritual aspects of yourself. You're a spiritual being whether you like it or not. However, eating meat, the actual act of eating meat, is more of a spiritual vampirism. But I wouldn't say it's spiritual in the sense of connecting closer with God or your higher self. In fact, if you were to take on a lighter diet that does not involve the digestion of flesh, you would see that you begin to remove these toxins outside of your body. You will see it in your feces, urine, and sweat. You shouldn't smell that bad, and most people aren't aware of how smelly the insides of their intestines truly are. Once you remove these toxins, you will actually begin to experience more spiritual effects. Many people talk about this feeling after going raw. If you know what I'm referring to, please leave a comment so others can see and learn. It's not to say that you can't have a spiritual experience while eating meat, but that one diet is more suited for the spiritual experience, and that is our ancestral diet of eating in harmony with nature. Eating meat is not harmony, and many meat eaters insist that this is somehow the cycle of life, yet if meat was so spiritual, explain how meat production and sales have gone up in the last 50 years, and yet I don't see a nation of spiritual gurus. The same argument could be said for mainstream vegans, as they are eating lab-grown meats, GMOs, and sugars. I got that, but remember, we're not promoting mainstream veganism. We are promoting the diet of the ancients. In this section, we're going to cover the true diet of the ancients and get to the bottom of whether or not the Tartarians, Celtic, Druids, were they carnivores or not. There are other channels out there that are saying that the Tartarians or Scythians were carnivores. They claim that vegetarianism is but a later corruption of the Vedic culture, and that their true ancestors were in fact a race of white carnivores who extracted the life force of other animals. Let's just see what the ancients had to say. From the Rig Veda, quote, "One who partakes of human flesh, the flesh of a horse or of another animal, and deprives others of milk by slaughtering cows, O king, if such a fiend does not desist by other means, then you should not hesitate to cut off his head." From the Manu Samhita, quote, "Meat can never be obtained without injury to living creatures. An injury to sentient beings is detrimental to the attainment of heavenly bliss. Let him therefore shun the use of meat. Having well considered the disgusting origin of flesh and the cruelty of fettering and slaying corporeal beings, let him entirely abstain from eating flesh." Again, from the Manu Samhita, quote, "He who permits the slaughter of an animal, he who cuts it up, he who kills it, he who buys or sells meat, he who cooks it, he who serves it up, and he who eats it, must all be considered as the slayers of the animal. There is no greater sinner than that man who, thou not worshipping the gods or the ancestors, seeks to increase the bulk of his own flesh by the flesh of other beings." Quote, "If he has a strong desire for meat, he may make an animal of clarified butter or one of flour and eat that, but let him never seek to destroy an animal without a lawful reason. As many hairs as the slain beast has, so often indeed will he who killed it without a lawful reason suffer a violent death in future births." Quote, "He who injures harmless creatures from a wish to give himself pleasure never finds happiness in this life or the next." Quote, "By subsisting on pure fruits and roots, and by eating food fit for ascetics in the forest, one does not gain so great a reward as by entirely avoiding the use of flesh. Me he ma sa will devour in the next world. Whose flesh I eat in this life, the wise declare this to be the real meaning of the word flesh, mam sa." Quote, "He who does not seek to cause the sufferings of bonds and death of the living creatures, but desires the good of all beings, obtains endless bliss. He who does not injure any creature attains without an effort what he thinks of, what he undertakes, and what he fixes his mind on." Quote, "By not killing any living being, one becomes fit for salvation." We move to the Mahabharata, quote, "He who desires to augment his own flesh by eating the flesh of other creatures lives in misery in whatever species he may take his next birth." Quote, "The purchaser of flesh performs violence by his wealth. He who eats flesh does so by enjoying its taste. The killer does violence by actually tying and killing the animal. Thus, there are three forms of killing: he who brings flesh or sends for it, he who cuts off the limbs of an animal, and he who purchases, sells, or cooks flesh and eats it. All these are to be considered meat eaters." And to the channel that was saying that vegetarianism is but an early corruption of the Vedic culture, the Mahabharata is over 5,000 years old, according to mainstream history. Quote, "The sins generated by violence curtail the life of the perpetrator. Therefore, even those who are anxious for their own welfare should abstain from meat eating." Bhishma stated, "Numberless discourses took place between the rishis on the subject. O scion of Kuru's race, listen, O Yudhishthira, what their opinion was." Quote, "The highly wise 7 celestial rishis, the Valakshilas, and those rishis who drink the rays of the sun, all speak highly of abstention from meat. The self-created Manu has said that the man who does not eat meat, or who does not kill living creatures, or who does not cause them to be killed, is a friend of all creatures. Such a man is incapable of being oppressed by any creature. He enjoys the confidence of all living beings. He always enjoys the praise of the pious. The virtuous Narada has said that the man who wishes to multiply his own flesh by eating flesh of other creatures meets with disaster. Quote, that man who having eat meat, gives it up afterwards, wins merit by such a deed that is so great that a study of all the Vedas or a performance, O Bharata, of all sacrifices, Vedic rituals, cannot give its like. Quote, that learned person who gives to all living creatures the gift of complete assurance is forsooth regarded as the giver of life breaths in this world. Quote, men gifted with intelligence and purified souls should always treat others as they themselves wish to be treated. It is seen that even those men who are endued with learning and who seek to acquire the greatest good in the shape of liberation are not free of the fear of death. Quote, what necessity be said of those innocent and healthy creatures gifted with the love of life, when they are sought to be killed by sinful wretches living by slaughter? Therefore, O king, know that the discarding of meat is the highest refuge of religion, of the celestial region, and of happiness. Abstention of injury to others is the highest religion. It is, again, the highest penance. It is also the highest truth from which all duty emanates. Quote, flesh cannot be had from grass or wood or stone. Unless a living creature is killed, it cannot be procured. Hence, is the fault of eating flesh. The celestials, who live upon sava, svada, and nectar, are given to truth and sincerity. Those persons, however, who are satisfying the sensation of taste, should be known as rakshasas, flesh-eating demons, pervaded by the quality of darkness. Quote, if there were nobody who ate flesh, then there would be nobody to slay living creatures. The man who slays living creatures kills them for the sake of the person who eats flesh. If flesh were not considered as food, there would then be no destruction of living creatures. It is for the sake of the eater that the destruction of living entities is carried on in the world. Since, O you of the great splendor, the period of life is shortened by persons who kill living creatures or cause them to be killed, it is clear that the person who seeks his own good should give up meat altogether. Those dreadful persons who are engaged in the destruction of living beings never find protectors when they are in need. Such persons should always be molested and punished, even as beasts of prey. Quote, the man who seeks to multiply his own flesh by eating the flesh of others has to live in the world in great anxiety, and after death has to take birth in different races and families. High rishis given to the observance of vows and self-control have said that abstention from meat is worthy of praise, productive of fame and heaven, and a great satisfaction itself. This I heard formerly, O son of Kunti, from Markandeya, when the rishi discoursed on the sins of eating flesh. Quote, he who purchases flesh kills living creatures through his money. He who eats flesh kills living beings through his eating. He who binds or seizes and actually kills living creatures is the slaughterer. These are the three sort of slaughter through each of these acts. He who does not himself eat flesh, but approves of an act of slaughter, becomes stained with the sin of slaughter. Quote, that wretched man who kills living creatures for the sake of those who would eat them commits great sin. The eater's sin is not as great. The wretched man who, following the path of religious rites and sacrifices as laid down in the Vedas, would kill a living creature from a desire to eat its flesh, will certainly go to hell. The man who, having eaten flesh, abstains from it afterwards acquires great merit on account of such abstention from sin. He who arranges for obtaining flesh, he who approves of those arrangements, he who kills, he who buys or sells, he who cooks, he who eats it, acquires the sin of those who are all considered as eaters of flesh. Therefore, that man who wishes to avoid disaster should abstain from the meat of every living creature. Quote, listen to me, O kings of kings, as I tell you this. O sinless one, there is absolute happiness in abstaining from meat. O king, he who practices severe austerities for a century and he who abstains from meat are both equally meritorious. This is my opinion. Quote, Yudhisthira said, alas, those cruel men who, not caring for various other sorts of food, want only flesh, are really like great rakshasas, meat-eating demons. Quote, Bhishma said, that man who wishes to increase his own flesh by the meat of another living creature is such that there is none meaner and more cruel than he. In this world, there is nothing that is dearer to a creature than his life. Hence, one should show mercy to the lives of others as he does to his own. Forsooth, O son, flesh has its origin in the vital seed. There is great sin attached to its eating, as indeed there is merit in abstaining from it. Quote, There's nothing, O delighter of the Kurus, that is equal in point of merit, either in this world or in the next, to the practice of mercy to all living creatures. Quote, hence, a person of purified soul should be merciful to all living creatures. That man, O king, who abstains from every kind of meat from his birth, forsooth, acquires a large space in the celestial region. They who eat the flesh of animals, who are desirous of life, are themselves later eaten by the animals they eat. This is my opinion. Since he has eaten me, I shall eat him in return. This Obarata forms the character of Mamsa, meaning flesh, or Mamsa mihi, or mihi will eat for having eaten him. The destroyer is always slain. After him, the eater meets with the same fate. Quote, he who acts with hostility towards another becomes victims of similar deeds done by the other. Whatever acts one does in whatever's bodies, he has to suffer the consequences thereof in those bodies. Quote, abstention from cruelty is the highest religion. Abstention from cruelty is the greatest self-restraint. Abstention from cruelty is the highest gift. Abstention from cruelty is the highest penance. Abstention from cruelty is the highest sacrifice. Abstention from cruelty is the highest power. Abstention from cruelty is the greatest friend. Abstention from cruelty is the greatest happiness. Quote, gifts made in all sacrifices, rituals, ablutions performed in all sacred water, and the merit which one acquires from making all kinds of gifts mentioned in the scriptures, all these do not equal in merit as abstention from cruelty. So let's just keep in mind that this is one of the most ancient texts that we have. So this whole idea that vegetarianism is but a corruption of later ages, this text makes it very clear how the ancients thought, and you have to understand that the Vedic culture is actually but a later derivation of much more ancient traditions like those of Atlantis. And so this is a spiritual tradition, and from these texts you can actually feel the philosophy. There is no philosophy behind eating meat. If so, feel free to let me know what it is. So we move on to the Bhagavata Purana. Quote, those who are ignorant of real dharma, and though wicked and haughty account themselves virtuous, kill animals without any feeling of remorse or fear of punishment. Further, in their next lives, such sinful persons will be eaten by the same creatures they have killed in this world. In our last Tartaria video, I mentioned many more references, but instead of repeating the same stuff that I say in that video, I'll just recommend that you guys go over and check that one out. With that said, I'll leave you with this for you to decide whether or not the Tartarians were carnivores.
Now, in the Srimad Bhagavatam, a Vedic text, we find that the word Arya referred to those who are advancing spiritually. The Aryan family is distributed all over the world and is known as Indo-Aryan. In prehistoric days, all of the members of the Aryan family followed the Vedic principles, and therefore they became spiritually advanced. The glorification of the Supreme Lord can be much appreciated by the Aryan family. Although there is no bar for others, the members of the Aryan family very quickly catch the essence of spiritual life. The ancient text goes on to say, an Aryan civilization is a civilization advanced in spiritual knowledge. Well, what about that? Now, we addressed this in the introduction, that we would be contending, we would be restoring this term, this terribly abused and misused term. And one could say so much about this. One could get into the whole story of the mistreatment of that word, both in England and in Nazi Germany and so on and so forth, but we don't want to go there. Let's just keep it simple and pure. These ancient texts, and one wonders, of course, why these texts were not consulted by the so-called experts, but the whole point of this presentation and so much of my work is to show that when it comes to expertise and things, you know, it's almost like that's right there. When you hear the term expert, when you hear the official statement, a lot of it is doublespeak. A lot of it is the manipulation of these terms. A lot of it is omission. A lot of it is clear, simple fabrication. And it starts with the etymology. It starts with the place names. It starts with the words. Like we said, it involves the arbitrary creation of borders and boundaries, which didn't exist in ancient times, all to distort what we know about ourselves and about truth. But look at this. The pure, unadulterated meaning of the word Aryan had nothing whatever to do with race. Quite the contrary. It was a word that had everything to do with caste. Specifically, it was a term that addressed people who were on a spiritual path. And it meant anyone of any country, any background, any nation. Those things, as we said in the introduction, did not mean as much. What mattered to ancient man, particularly after the Great Cataclysm that had seen so much mortality. We're not talking about a tsunami that takes a few thousand lives. We're not talking about a war or battle or disaster, in which there are certain casualties. We're talking about a global catastrophe of unimaginable proportions. Is there any heart and mind looking at the carnage, the death of the animals, which has been recorded by many scientists, and the huge death amongst the genocide, not the genocide, but the mega death that was caused by the tumult and the cataclysm of nature? Are you going to then be a prejudiced mind that still harbors some sort of grievance against fellow human beings after such a devastating attack? Such a frenzied and devastating thing that has occurred to the human race? Of course not. Well, what you might be interested in, as your forefathers were interested in the prehistorical days, and which, if only we were still interested in, was moral superiority, spiritual advancement. And this is very fundamental, because now as we delve into these great mysteries, which make so much sense of our time, we find something incredible. That this word Ari was a word that represented the female goddess, and that through her it was implied that you were of reverence to the earth and to the sky, that you were an adept, that you had a duty to perform, an active duty. And of course you had to then, not just any old idiot could do that duty. So you had to be a person who had matriculated and advanced and had purified, and just like certain people, are able to communicate excellently today with animals, well, that's what we're talking about. A highly sensitized, highly advanced individual, a shaman, somebody who gets up at night to watch the stars, the minute movements of the planets and the luminaries, somebody who knows an enormous amount about the herbs of the world. And if you study Irish mythology, it's clear that they had a tremendous knowledge of herbs in the most ancient of days. You had to be an Ari, a noble one. These ancient texts of the Vedas, they may be situated in India, of course, but as we said, on the Saraswati River, on the Ganges, on the Indus River, were giant communities, in which Western men, the great noblemen, the great ambassadors of truth from the far West, whose appearance was very different, but they've left their genes, they've left their racial traditions and so on there. These individuals were revered. They were men of knowledge, men of architecture, men of astronomy, and so on. And their name, start with the word, start with the etymology, and the whole contorted knot, the Gordian knot of lies begins to unravel. Or continue believing what the history books tell you about this term and this word, and about everything else that they put forward. Now, Swami B.V. Giri, in his book The Aryan Invasion, an expert, of course, on the ancient Vedic texts like the Srimad Bhagavatam, he says the Sanskrit word Aryan refers to one who is righteous and noble. It is also used in the context of addressing a gentleman, Arya Putra, Arya Kanya, etc. According to Mueller's etymological explanation, and he's talking there about the historian Max Mueller, Mueller's etymological explanation, the meaning of Arya is given as excellent, best, followed by respectable. It's a noun, like master, lord. It means worthy, honorable, excellent. The upholder of Aryan values. And further, it denotes a teacher, an employer, a master, a father-in-law, a friend. Back to the Srimad Bhagavatam. And you can see excerpts of this book online. From the stanzas and passages of the Srimad Bhagavatam, it says, Aryans do not kill even a single plant unnecessarily. There we are again, back to the difference between the murderous, treacherous, self-serving, narcissistic criminal syndicates that we have running the world today, compared to, as we said, the pre-Diluvian, antediluvian philosopher kings, you see, that this world is now, not graced by anymore. They say Aryans do not kill even a single small plant unnecessarily, not to speak of cutting trees for sense gratification. Aryans do not distinguish between lower and higher grades of life. Aryans do not distinguish between lower and higher grades of life. Ever think and contemplate the difference between hierarchy and holarchy? Well, we've got evolutionists, we've got hierarchies, we've got you, somebody above you and you below, and then somebody, poor sucker, below you. We're living in hierarchies here. Ever thought about that might be one of the reasons why the life is in the horrendous, dysfunctional state that it's in?
If you have questions on what the diet should be, then I highly recommend watching the Human Diet 2020 video. I've gotten many messages from people that say they have been truly transformed by it. Let us know if you have any questions. And stay tuned, as this is actually part of a bigger idea. I first needed to establish some groundwork in the concept of whether or not the ancients were carnivores, so I decided to do it in separate videos. We truly appreciate all the support, and may our minds be unveiled.
Let go of everything you think to be true. Relax the mind and ask the question, do I truly understand what this reality is?